Assalamualaikum dan salam sejahtera. Terima kasih Dr. Zariat di atas sedikit pengenalan sebentar tadi. Dan hari ini saya akan berkongsi berkenaan dengan e-SULAM, online community engagement. Right? So I think saya dah kongsi saya punya screen. Okay, so all right, so I will conduct the talk in English. So every now and then I'll mix a blend of Malay, and I'll finish up my lecture first, the talk first. Then we will have a Q&A session. All right, so e-SULAM online community engagement. So this slide is prepared together with Jawatan Kuasa Strategik Service Learning Malaysia, University for Society or SULAM, under the Jabatan Pendidikan Tinggi, Kementerian Pengajian Tinggi Malaysia. Last year, we started planning this playbook, and it is already available in a number of IT websites. For example, in CADe, this is the playbook for SULAM, where the guidelines are provided there on how to conduct service learning, how to develop rubrics, the assessment as well. I mean, the plannings are all there. So for the slides today, I will refer mostly from the playbook. So it's just that we're turning it into an e-platform. So why SULAM? I mean, maybe people have heard of this. I mean, the service learning or CBL. It actually originated from the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2015-2025 under higher education, where we look under the first shift, where the initiative to enhance the curriculum. In this case, for higher education, so the courses conducted in the university needs to have these high impact educational practices. And for service learning or community-based learning, it falls under the 8 HIPS practice, right? So what is SULAM in general? It is actually a course-based credit-bearing educational experience in which the student participates in a structured service activity that meets identified community needs, reflects on the service activity, and experiences to achieve desired learning outcomes in such a way as to gain deeper understanding of course content, a broader appreciation of the discipline, enhanced sense of personal values, and civic responsibility. So where does this service learning fit in? I mean, it fits in between 6 different components. I mean, the academic part, the community involvement, practical experiences, internship, civic, community service, or volunteerism. So this is when service learning overlaps between all these 6 components. There are a few examples, and all this terminology, I mean, may look different, okay? I mean, the activities that involves in teaching and learning method, for example. I mean, one can volunteer at the hospital or take up an internship at the hospital or conduct a service learning at the hospital. But the terminology needs to be clear. The word volunteer is in reference to a student which are freely offering themselves to take part in any organization to undertake a particular task without being paid. And as for internship, these students will take up a training position in the organization that they will have to gain working experience to satisfy requirements for a qualification. And for service learning in this case, it is a learning activity that involves students in a wide range of experiences, and it is often benefiting others and the community, apart from advancing the goals of the given curriculum. So, example for a community service. If students remove trash from a residential yard, they are providing a service to the community as volunteers. So in this case, like gotong royong, I mean, that will be considered as a community service. However, for service learning, when the students remove trash from the residential yard, and then they analyze the trash from what they can found, and when they analyze this, the trash collected there, and then they share the results, and they offer suggestions to the community on how to reduce pollution and then reflect on their experience. That is what we call as service learning. Service learning means that there is an engagement with the community. They will advocate the community, discuss with the community, and they will have a reflection step. So that is the important part of service learning. Service learning is actually an element in a course in order to achieve a specific learning outcome. It is also a form of teaching and learning method. I am very sure quite a number of you may have experienced teaching service learning, but in this context, maybe you have not included a certain like a reflection, or the rubrics or the assessment could be different. It is all about enhancing the learning experience for the students, improve the community, transformative community engagement, and usually a service learning activity are usually structured, and experiential learning and reflection will take place. Service learning, in this case, is not an episodic volunteer program, and it is not an add-on to an existing university curriculum. It actually, whatever courses that you already have, is just that you embed them together with the course that you currently have. The logging, it does not involve a logging set of number of community service hours in order to graduate. It doesn't involve compensatory service assigned as a form of punishment by the courts or by school administrators. And it should not be one-sided, benefiting only students or only the community. It must benefit all parties. So how SULAM works, I'll give you an example. For a course, for example, a course in the communication, Com 323, students need to improve their public relation writing skills. That is the learning outcome for this course. And the community needs is that, the instructor and the students, they found that they wanted to join with the community, to help the community. And in this case, at Old Folks Home, this community needs to develop a newsletter that informs the community of the variety of programs and services they provide. So that is when the instructor will come out with a SULAM strategy, a service learning activity, where students will work at the Old Folks Home for at least 3 hours a week to learn about the organization. Then after they are familiar with the organization, they will produce a monthly newsletter to be distributed within the neighborhood. So that's how SULAM works. It is a combination of bringing together learning outcomes, looking at the community needs, and that's when service is being provided. So what are the key components of SULAM? The three things that we have to look as well is the course content, which is really important. You have to identify which course that is suitable to conduct a service learning. Is it going to bring any meaningful service to the community? And it is a must to conduct critical reflection in every stages during the semester or during the progress of the course. And most importantly, there are 3 to 4 stakeholders that needs to play a role. The students is important as well, the lecturer, the community, and highly recommended if we have the industry to get involved. So what are the objectives of SULAM? So SULAM is meant to improve students' learning by integrating theory with practice in the real world. So preferably that SULAM is being introduced towards the final 2 years of their program, right? So they have gained some extra knowledge from the curriculum that they have gone through towards their program. And they will also be able to increase their soft skills, civic engagement among students, and it needs meet the needs of the community through volunteerism by using students' expertise. It will create a collaborative environment between students, lecturers, and the community, and it provide a platform and opportunities for agencies, corporates, and NGOs to contribute to the community through volunteering. And of course, the third mission of most universities is that university is there for the society. That's when the service comes into the picture. So what are the effective practices in SULAM? I mean, the first thing is that the assignment must be connected to the students' learning outcomes. That needs to be clear. And the assignment is connected to the course content, and those connections are discussed during class time. In this case, I mean, due to the pandemic, I mean, class time will have to be changed from face-to-face to online. And the service activities are organized and executed with the community partner, not for or to the community partner. And the community partner must be a non-profit. And students and lecturers do not receive payment for their service. And there is a reflection component included in the assignment. Students will have to conduct at least a significant number of hours serving the community partner. I mean, 20 hours is recommended throughout the semester. And the service activities are a graded and required component of the course. Since the pandemic started, I mean, I think all of us are sort of forced to change the way we teach. The methodology needs to be changed, and mainly we have to do it from face-to-face to online. But for SULAM, in this case, for e-SULAM, there are possibilities to do either 100% online, 50-50, 60-40. There's a lot of flexibility depending on the situation. And of course, the instructor will have to plan and strategize for the students. What is e-SULAM? It is actually an electronic form of SULAM. It is delivered via online platform or other form of digital technologies, platform to be used by students, lecturers, community partners, and other parties. And they will have to collaborate from a distance in an organized, focused, and experiential SULAM activity. So everything needs to be changed, maybe no more face-to-face, I mean 100% online, and you will have to use the same platform using the technology that we have. So a typical format of e-SULAM is that the instructor will have to look into the course design. I mean, where do we include the e-SULAM activity? I mean, they need to identify the location, where do they want to serve, which community that they want to help and assist. I mean, that's when the students will perform the e-SULAM, like what has been conducted in a normal manner of SULAM, like face-to-face. And at that point, students will discover the relevance of the coursework in real world. I mean, this should broaden their horizon, and they would appreciate the value of e-SULAM, even though it is not conducted face-to-face. I mean, at the end, the student will complete the assessment. So at any part of the progress of throughout the 14 weeks of the semester, it is important that reflections are being taking place. So what are the elements of e-SULAM? So the instruction component, the service component, or both are conducted online. It can be either fully online or partially on-site. I mean, it really depends on the learning outcomes of the SULAM course. And of course, depending on the scenario. I mean, from MCO, RMCO, everything will differ. And maybe in the next semester or in the future, the elements of e-SULAM can already be introduced, and it could be a practice already. I mean, the community must be able to reach out through online or even face-to-face approach. I mean, the online community service may include the regional, national, or even global partners for service projects. So again, throughout the course, I mean, structured reflection needs to take place, and dialogue via asynchronous online blogs or text discussion, or via synchronous audio or even video conferencing. So these are some elements which are important to actually, to identify that makes e-SULAM. So which technology tools to use for e-SULAM activities? There are many available, and I think throughout the past 3 months, most of us are sort of well-equipped or well-trained, getting to know of all these apps. which are available for online teaching. I mean, for e-SULAM to conduct e-SULAM activities, I mean, to engage with your student, I mean, you can actually use different platforms like Zoom, or even to engage with the community, you can use Zoom, Google Meet, or WebEx. I mean, sometimes with low bandwidth internet, I mean, WhatsApp, Telegram, I mean, the email to disseminate informations can be used. I mean, the instructors may use the PowerPoint with audio assist. So you record your voice going through instruction via PowerPoint, and all these instructions, it may be you want to use other platforms like Moodle or Blackboard or Putra Blast to upload your instructions or conduct activities. And reflections can also be done on Padlet, and I mean, the recording of activities to engage with the community. I mean, how to teach the community how to improve, for example, how to plant money plants. I mean, maybe students can make videos and post it on YouTube and link it together into social media. I mean, like Facebook, Instagram. I mean, the one form of assessment is that the students can prepare e-portfolio, a journal, that you can put it up on issue, right? So there are many tools that we can conduct e-SULAM activities. It doesn't have to be face-to-face, printing out material. Everything can be done, and I've seen quite a number of examples throughout this semester from other universities and also from UPM, how they managed to overcome the issue of not being able to be having classes face-to-face. They conduct e-SULAM activities. So here are some examples of e-SULAM activities. I mean, you can actually conduct a background research or gathering best practices or other information requested by the community partner. I mean, for example, this community wants to know how to improve their marketing on to sell products online. So you don't even have to meet them face to face. Students can engage them via WhatsApp. I mean, conduct meetings online via Google Meet or WebEx or Zoom, right? So, I mean, teaching or conducting workshops with the benefiting community partner can be done either by recording or streaming platforms, YouTube, for example, Facebook Live, and sometimes you can even engage by creating digital content, social media content, print program materials, other forms of method for information sharing. Sometimes there are courses that requires them to develop apps. Okay, so I mean, that can benefit the community partner. I mean, very simple. I mean, you'll be surprised that there are some community who wants to actually promote their product on social media. They have no clue on how to open a social media account, linked it from Facebook to Instagram or even the Twitter. So perhaps the students can come out with a simple video, a standard manual that they can use for or disseminate information to the community. And another example is by creating virtual educational materials such as webinars. Quite a number of courses adapted this method, and they can undertake assessment to evaluate, looking at feedbacks via phone or web-based services. I mean, with the current pandemic, I mean, there are a few that can actually offer or compile brainstorm strategies on how to provide indirect support. I mean, from volunteers, for example. Group online coaching through social media platform. I mean, it can be done. There are a few people have been doing it. I saw some from Oopsie. They conducted an online fit-in coaching during the pandemic at home that covers health, in education, business, marketing, IT, and agriculture. So many disciplines that can come together when we do e-SULAM activities. So here are some examples that I managed to gauge from the report by KPT. So for UMS, I mean, what we saw that they conducted STEM for preschoolers at SK Rampayan. they use face-to-face and online, and they also look into, they provide program to overcome depression among the communities in Kampung Kobuni Inanam. So they had an online session between the students and the community, and all these are conducted by the Faculty of Psychology and Pendidikan, UMS. And last month, UITM, the Faculty of Law, they conducted a webinar. It is arranged, and also the moderator is a student, a final student for the law program in UITM. And for the Faculty of Education, UPM, they also conduct a program, in this case a competition, Inspirasi STEM melalui Al-Quran. So you see all this activity were done throughout the MCO period. So there are many. So that means is that we were forced to change our approach. Apparently, many of us are able to do that. So this method, can be done in the future. If we're not able to have face-to-face session with the community, the lecturers and students, and even the industry. So how to ensure a good practice of e-SULAM? There are three targets that we need to really look into. First is the technology. The technology in this case, the digital technology, all the students, the community partner, and of course the instructor, they need to be trained. We need to know how to use this technology, how to use Zoom, how to use Google Meet, how to record videos and upload it on YouTube. We will have to train them. And it needs to be, again, it needs to have a bridge of synchronous and asynchronous methods. And we have to conduct trial runs prior to live sessions, like the webinar, for example, and assess community partner and student technical capacity. That is one of the most crucial part. We need to know whether they have low bandwidth or high bandwidth or medium bandwidth internet connectivity. Because without good internet connection or being unable to identify the internet connection, that's when there will be a communication breakdown. So in this case, the communication is essential. So from the very beginning, you need to have a clear expectations. In MOU, it doesn't have to be written, it needs to be clear among the students, the stakeholders, the community, and of course, the instructor. The community partner access to course shall be given, and they have to understand what is expected from the course, and use of groups, group space, and on course management system, and community partner reveal in this case means that they need to get involved as well, need to be engaged throughout the discussion. Course design is also essential. The service that we are providing to the community, the students providing the service needs to be related to the learning objectives. And it needs to be appropriate typology, and the reflection have to take place. Community partners and students will have to give feedbacks, and it needs to be documented. So what are the examples of SULAM experiential learning activities? This is taken up from the SULAM playbook. Presentation to community partner sponsors is really important. The first part of it is that you need to engage with the community. You need to analyze and identify what type of service that the community needs. What skills then that the students can relate and provide that is in requirement to the learning outcomes. You have to communicate with the community partners, if there are funders, on how to accomplish the desired project, right? And then that's when the execution takes place. After that, you have to plan the project, implementation, reporting. That involves scheduling. If there's budget involved, how do you arrange the budget? That's when student needs to come into the picture. They have to provide or divide a task between them. Teamwork is essential. The instructor will have to monitor on this. And students must identify what knowledge they need to execute their plan. This involves designing and innovation. and they have to learn to prepare or for any changes in plans. In this case, I mean, like during the MCO period, at one point, we are able to move from one state to another. So that means perhaps students would consider to have a face-to-face session with the community, maybe by observing the SOP, I mean, social distancing, that also can be done. I mean, the deep reflection needs to come at the end. So, I mean, that means deep reflection. I mean, other stages will have reflections, but at very end, they need to actually incorporate all the reflection activities. I mean, you can segregate them from what's been done before, during, and after the project is being completed. So that's when the instructor, together with the students, will have to examine the preconception and relation with theories learned and social community issues that are they being addressed or not. So like what I mentioned earlier, in any part of service learning, critical reflection is important. So what does it mean by critical reflection? I mean, it is actually a process of analyzing experience to create a meaning for the experience. I mean, critical reflections is the most important key element of SULAM that connects the academic content and SULAM experiences. Critical reflection can be articulated in written form, orally, or as artistic expression. So that's when you start using the technology that I showed to you earlier. Discussion, reflections can be done on a Padlet, either on Trello. I mean, it can even be on WhatsApp, okay? So the critical reflection is important for students to analyze their experience, like when they conduct the service learning. They will have to look into how they make their decisions, and draw on theory and how they adjust their behaviors to newly constructed conclusion, I mean, before conducting the next activity, for example, okay? So at this point as well, I mean, it is good, I mean, to actually have the community to provide feedbacks. They may have feedbacks on how the students conduct the activity. I mean, how they provide the service, how do they advocate, do they find it difficult, or maybe they will have to change, the students needs to change the approach, for example, because sometimes students may be doing it by the book, that it becomes very technical. So they will have to adapt with the community itself and the scenario. How to ensure a good reflection practice? I mean, it needs to be continuous. It needs to be encouraged throughout the semester. So importantly, that you at least have 3 stages: before, during, and after the service learning or SULAM experience. And the reflection needs to be connected, and it should refer directly to students' own SULAM experience. In the challenging, another thing is that they should challenge students. We should challenge students to think critically how to relate the SULAM activities that they conduct, relate to their academic content, in this case, learning outcome, looking at the experience from the past few years that they have taken up the program. I mean, what are the elements that they can perhaps advocate or provide service to the community? And of course, social responsibility. So this needs to be embedded or being taught to the student on how to be responsible. I mean, especially, I mean, dealing with community, how do they engage? I mean, that's how do perhaps there's some delicate matters or some discrete matters that needs to be respected, right? So the 4th aspect that needs to be looked into is contextualize. So it should be consistent. This reflection should be consistent and complementary to other course content, right? So we'll have to look at the overview picture, the overall picture of the course content. What kind of assessments that can be done in e-SULAM? I mean, there are many. I mean, it is very flexible. It is up to the course coordinator. How do they want to design it? I mean, journals can be can be given as an assessment by providing blogs. I mean, making e-portfolios, And of course, reflections, participation of everyone needs to be monitored. I mean, the presentations, for example, performance, that really depends. So rubrics are, suggested rubrics are available on SULAM playbook, so you can have a look at it. So, and it is best to inform the student. This is what is expected from you throughout the course, okay? I mean, there's a service learning activity, e-SULAM, so provide them with different ideas. I mean, how do you want to present, for example? I mean, and you have to highlight the importance of reflections and participation among all member students. So how much time is required? I mean, this is actually one of the most famous questions being asked, like almost every lecturer that conducts service learning or SULAM. I mean, roughly about 20 hours, 15 to 20 hours per semester. And that breakdown depends on the course instructor. It's very flexible. It could be when the student, it doesn't mean that while they were doing face-to-face or preparation, like making proposals or drafting the budget, I mean, making videos, I mean, all of that are considered as, I mean, engaging with the, or serving the community. So that is when SULAM engagement activities. So the type of activities are very flexible depending on how the course instructor conducts the course. Yeah. And the most critical part is actually how to form this SULAM partnership. I mean, it is actually important for the course instructor to do a little bit of homework to identify the partners before the semester opens. And perhaps in this coming next semester, I mean, perhaps you can start looking for some possible partners that you want to work with, the community. You can examine the history of relationships between the institutions and the community, whether they have done on UPM or the institution have done any engagement with this community or not. And you have to get to know your partners. Ask your partner what kind of problems or what kind of assistant would you like to have, okay? I mean, they need to be advised on perhaps marketing. They need to be advised on how to improve production in the farm for maybe milk production, or to improve soil for agriculture. So the students can actually provide the advice. I mean, and you have to make sure that the community partners are involved in every stages of decision making. So that is the key in partnership, in a good partnership. How to develop a e-SULAM or SULAM project. So this needs to be conducted by the course instructor. And I mean, this is from the playbook, and I think many of us are aware of how we conduct e-SULAM or SULAM. I mean, basically, the dean will have to identify them, and the course coordinator will need to plan the teaching plan, identify communities that they want to be approaching, and once the semester starts, you provide the information to students by giving instruction either by online or face-to-face. I mean, if it's by online, you can use various technology platforms that I introduced earlier. And during that period as well, when the student starts to approach communities, please make sure that you have reflection sessions with them, okay? So then you need to look and identify needs of the community. This could be overlapping throughout the perhaps week 2 to week 8 of the semester. I mean, you'll have to identify, I mean, they will raise issues. And during this period, that's when the SULAM project or activity will be conducted. I mean, that means transfer of knowledge. It will either be to conduct workshops, clinics, seminars, webinars in this case, I mean, even campaigns. I saw some activity, online campaign from UIA, IAUM, where they, to overcome depression, if I'm not, and then some problem solutions can be provided as well. And at the end, I mean, you'll have a presentation. I mean, that could involve the student together with the community or the student itself. And of course, every part reflection is essential. And the rubrics, I mean, it is up to the course coordinator how to design the rubrics. This is an example of working model from UTM, CCSL, I mean, on how to engage or establish partnership within the community. I mean, this is when you have identified the community, you inform the students, I mean, the meetings that are required, okay? At the beginning, you will have a preliminary discussion, I mean, meet with the students, introduction of the program, that's when the project paper will come into the picture where the students will have to start I mean, filling up or conducting meetings or looking into budgets. These are some examples. These are just an example, but it's very flexible depending on the project that the course coordinator planned, okay? And there are a few steps, I mean, implementation as well, I mean, reporting. These are some examples, okay? So it is totally flexible depending on the course coordinator and the nature of the institution. Okay, so how did they want to design the throughout the 14 weeks of the semester? So what are the benefits of e-SULAM? I mean, throughout this pandemic, I mean, what we can see, I mean, it expands access to a broad array of SULAM experiences in the community without geographical constraint. I mean, because you can do it online. The community could be somewhere in Perak and or Ipoh, but your students are like practically everywhere because you're at home. So it's not that they cannot communicate with each other. They can still conduct the activity. I mean, everything via online. However, the technical capacity, that's when you have to look into. You have to ensure that that it is the technical capacity has been addressed. Okay, so another benefit is that it ensures diversity of experiences, access to various community partners. I mean, that could be like the disabled, rural population. I mean, perhaps there are some people who are shy or introvert individuals when you see them face to face, and sometimes community partners can also be very shy or introvert. And perhaps via online, they will be more participative or active, okay? Either by using WhatsApp messages or even Telegram. And at this point, I mean, the e-SULAM should enhance the potential to standardize SULAM experience across the curriculum and assist in efficient use of lectures resources. I mean, especially for this, for lectures in this case of the pandemic, they can use online platforms to create, monitor, and evaluate SULAM courses. So when we conduct anything, like when we conduct teaching, for example, I mean, there will always be barriers. I mean, we'll have to understand that when we conduct in an e-platform, it's totally different. I mean, because there's no longer face-to-face. So in this case, SULAM, in a traditional form, it is already requiring extra work and effort on the part of lecturers to create community partnerships and support students in connecting with service opportunities. You have to look into it already, maintain communication with community partners, incorporating reflections, many barriers that you already have when you conduct normal SULAM. I mean, some lecturers who highly committed throughout SULAM may abandon their SULAM efforts when they migrate from teaching to teaching online because they view the online medium as a barrier to SULAM. But it should not be that way. You have to have an open mind. I mean, somehow, if the pandemic and the MCO period has been extended, I mean, the academic year cannot be put on hold. I mean, people will have to teach. We have to teach. Student needs to study as well. So you have to learn and adapt. I mean, that are one of the barriers. These are two major barriers: extra work, and of course, I mean, unable to adapt to the online medium. So there are some issues that we can oversee when conducting e-SULAM. I mean, they are lurking. Some students may log into the session, but fail to participate in it, okay? And especially when they are not showing their faces, like webcams, okay? I mean, you do not know whether they're there behind the camera or not. They could be wandering around and just logging into the session when you have a Zoom session or a class session with them to explain about SULAM or conducting activities. I mean, that's when you have to have a no lurking zone policy in the syllabus. So you need to actively direct questions towards these lurkers that you may identify. So if it's in a smaller group, maybe it's easier for you to monitor, okay? There will always be someone that just watch what is going on the webinar. So another issue is lopsided participation. That's when the students, during the live session, they tend to type text, right? In opposed to visual verbal participation, right? So that means they don't show their webcam. I mean, maybe they say because of low bandwidth. I mean, that is a different issue. I mean, there's an action for, as an instructor, what you can do. So perhaps you can award extra credit for those switching on their webcams, right? So that's one way of looking at it. And the other one is student being disconnected. So, I mean, as a course a lecturer, I mean, someone who teaches, we know that students will eventually disconnect. I mean, even more if you are not having face-to-face session with them. Students sometimes feel isolated, get bored, disengaged, daydreaming. I'm very sure there are a number of them who are like that. So I mean, this is due to, I mean, because it's online some more, there will be lack of student interaction. Okay, I mean, and the communication with the community and lecture will be lacking. I mean, that is when because it's already online. So this is when the course instructor, course coordinator will have to outline, okay, the required teamwork, the live community sessions, the breakout discussions that needs to be conducted. And you have to choose community willing to work with the technology. In this case, the community needs to be trained or open to use online platforms and allow opportunities for reflection. This is really important. So you have to throw the question, please reflect. What have you seen in the previous engagement? So you have to keep on asking that. And archive synchronous events for later student viewing. So usually we can record your sessions either by Zoom or WebEx, okay, or Google Meet. So these can be used as a reference as well. So other possible issues in e-SULAM, which is the biggest one, I think, for many of us, will be the technology. Software and hardware limitations, firewalls, individual skill levels, and of course, other unforeseen problems, okay? So, I mean, some software, I mean, like they have certain hours for like online discussion using Zoom, okay, or webinars. Sometimes 40 minutes, 45 minutes, okay? I mean, that requires like subscription. So there are some limitations there, right? And of course, the individual skill levels to use this kind of technology, that could be from the instructor's part or the community or the student. So that's when the course coordinator needs to provide training for the other instructors, or I mean the other lecturers involved in the subject. You need to train the students, community partners as well. It is essential that you have a backup plan in case of technological failure. Okay, it's like hiccups in IT. That's when you need to use phone instead. Okay, to call, right? I mean, or if it's low bandwidth in the community, change using WhatsApp, for example. I mean, include instructional design or IT unit as a fundamental fourth partner. Okay, library services as a fifth. That means how to get the student to get information from the library, for example, to understand, how the critical, how to advocate, certain topics, issues. The library needs to be accessible to them. Google is always there as well. So, and also it is essential to conduct trial run, for the initial community session. Right, so other issues, of course, internet connection. Even here, we're in UPM, sometimes we have hiccups with the internet. Students may have limited or no access at all to internet connection. This may limit to their progress to conduct or even complete the SULAM project. So that is when you need to identify from the very beginning the technical capacity of each student. You'll have to mix students with stable and those with limited internet connection to ensure the smooth progress of the discussion or the progress of the SULAM project. And you have to divide tasks according to students' internet access. Get financial assistance for students if possible with the internet data plan. I think the other day, UPM provides some which avenue for them to apply in case they have low internet data plan, for example, right? So, and the most important thing nowadays is netiquette. In this case, we need to monitor how our students engage via online. It is important for us to train them and expose to them on proper manners and behavior online. We have to be courteous and precise and always highlight to the students that avoid issues like cyberbullying, because everything is online, anything can happen. Harassing, threatening, embarrassing people or target another person should not be done. Maybe perhaps among them inside the group. The group member students, sometimes they post up on social media and people start criticizing, sometimes even their student members criticizing each other. And never spam others, especially asking the community partner with unnecessary questions. You have to advise your students on that and avoid overusing emoticons, okay? So usually this appears on WhatsApp. Right, so these are a few things that I have discussed earlier on how to conduct e-SULAM. It's actually from the SULAM playbook that we have made prepared, and from this group of committee members, led by Prof. Zaki and a few more from other universities. So the SULAM playbook has been designed in a way that is very flexible for everybody to use. Do not be afraid to actually get involved with service learning. You'll be surprised that it actually will be beneficial for you at the same time, and of course to the student. You may have done service learning before. It's just some elements need to be improved perhaps. The service learning is very flexible. In this case, SULAM is very flexible. Do not be afraid. It is just an approach, right? The critical thing that you need to understand is that the student needs to go through a reflection stages. That is essential, okay? So other than that, to how to engage with the community, to form partnership, that's when the course coordinator will have to be more proactive. They need to start looking for, before the semester begins, for potential community to approach. It can be done. Visiting schools is one way of looking at it. Visiting community surrounding their students' village, perhaps, the neighborhood, they can do that as well, okay? These are some examples. So, apart from that, I think that's it for now. So I would like to thank you for listening. So I would like to open for Q&A. If you have any questions, I will try my best to address it. So I'll pass it to Miss Yasmin, and I'll check for the Q&A if you have any questions.
Okay, terima kasih Dr. Mukrish atas pembincangan itu tadi. Ada dua soalan yang dimasukkan dalam chat tu.
Yep.
Pertama daripada Dr. Mashita, adakah wajib untuk setiap pelajar menyertai SULAM kerana ia bukan syarat bergraduat?
Okey, untuk soalan ni dia bukan syarat untuk graduat, memang betul. Tetapi untuk kos tersebut, kursus tersebut, dia ada sekiranya assessment, penilaian berterusan melibatkan penglibatan semua pelajar. Okay? So sekiranya ada aktiviti sulam yang memerlukan pelajar untuk melawat kawasan contohnya, maka pelibatan pelajar tu ada, boleh diberi memang kena ada penilaian, dan memang betul ia bukan syarat bergraduat, tetapi kerana dia telah dimasukkan sekali sebagai penilaian berterusan dalam kursus, di mana flexibility itu bergantung kepada yang course coordinator bagi subjek tersebut. Okay. Soalan seterusnya saya nampak ni, how do we recognize and select a course to make it as e-SULAM? So advisable, lebih baik sekiranya subjek yang sudah masuk pada tahun ketiga ataupun tahun keempat, tahun akhir pengajian, di mana sebab tujuan service learning atau SULAM ini adalah supaya pelajar dapat memberi bantuan ataupun servis daripada bidang kepakaran yang dipelajarinya ketika tahun 1 dan tahun 2 ataupun tahun ketiga, di mana ilmunya mungkin sudah ada, di mana dia boleh terlibat dalam decision making. So itu ada tanggungjawab dekan dan juga TDA dan juga pensyarah tersebut untuk melihat apakah kursus yang sesuai untuk dimasukkan elemen e-SULAM ataupun SULAM. Lagipun dia hanya perlukan minimum 15 hingga 20 jam, dan itu adalah fleksibel bergantung kepada course coordinator tersebut. Okay. Soalan seterusnya adalah, our department assigned a subject in teaching. Students were given a topic related to their program to share to the community. Due to MCO Facebook page, upload videos they are required to share. At the end of the screenshot, hence we also discuss. This is actually also sufficient, and it is considered SULAM as well. Okay, it's a different community needs. How you addressed it. Using the online platform, you have Facebook. Students develop the video content. Putting out surveys. They give services or feedbacks to the community, and that is considered SULAM. But you have to make sure they are reflections. Reflections were taking place. That takes place before or during or after the SULAM activity. Right, so let me check the other one. Soalan dari YouTube.
There are some questions dekat chat box.
Ya.
Okay.
Saya tengah tengok ni soalan.
And satu soalan daripada YouTube yang saya forward ni. Melalui Al-Quran, how this program can be e-SULAM? Because as far as I know, the kids in school did the video by themselves and without any guidance from the organizer.
Okay, that is actually the students. It is school kids that provide the video, but then again, the organizers will have to be students' involvement as well. So the students will come out with perhaps designing the program layout, the competition, how it is being conducted. So that needs to be planned by them. So that's one way of looking at it. And for this faculty of biotech, service learning can be done for school kids. Yes, it could be anyone, right? Because I think the ones that the example that I gave from UMS, they actually have conducted STEM for preschoolers, prasekolah. not even the standard one yet. So that was conducted using face-to-face and also online with the schools, preschoolers. Right? How do we engage with community with restrictions such as social distancing? Okay, I mean, with social distancing, that's when you address the problems by using online platform, like what I suggested to you. It doesn't mean that you have to be there face to face with the community. I mean, how you engage with the community with Facebook Live, for example, or even YouTube. So, people would ask questions in the chat box, like what you're doing right now. So the students will have to answer or address the questions from those viewing online. Okay, so that's one way of engaging with the community in this era of pandemic. So, okay, then when involved with children with disabilities, do we have to apply for ethics? All right, so when we talk about the normal SOP, the standard way of conducting research or surveys, in this case, you're dealing with children's or those with disabilities. Of course, they are you have to apply for approval, for example. So that is when the students will have to be trained or to be exposed on how to get this permission. They will have to engage with the district office or a certain community, some jawatan kuasa kampung, for example. So these are the few things that they will have to do. You will provide them with the tools, the guidance on how to do it. They will have to conduct it on their own, okay, in order to complete the task. Because you have to remember, SULAM is all about experiential learning. The ones that needs to be experiencing it will be students, not the course coordinator. Okay. All right, so anything else? Did I manage to answer everybody's question here? Right. Puan Yasmin, ada lagi ke daripada YouTube soalan?
Actually ada.
Oh ya ke? Okay.
Banyak juga ni yang baru tulis ni.
Oh ya ke? Okay, saya jawab Dr. Mashita ni dulu. Adakah program di jabatan fakulti yang diorganisasi oleh pelajar boleh dikira sebagai SULAM? Aktiviti atau program yang dilaksanakan oleh jabatan atau fakulti sekiranya termasuk di dalam course content di mana pelajar dinilai, maka dia boleh dikirakan sebagai SULAM, di mana dia memberikan servis kepada komuniti sebagai contoh, dan berlakunya proses reflection. You have to have a reflection. These are a few elements which is important. Okay, so lagi satu, pendapat SULAM di-embed dalam subjek MPU, asas penggunaan usahawanan, student yang ambil subjek around. Okay, student yang ramai, sebenarnya boleh juga dilaksanakan, tetapi bergantung kepada course coordinator, bagaimana dia hendak menyusun course content. Dia perlu linkkan kepada aktiviti service learning SULAMnya, advocacy daripada pelajar, apa jenis servis, dan linkkan kembali ke community. Tengok balik kepada course. Mungkin dalam 600 hingga 1000, mungkin ada lebih baik dibuatnya dalam kumpulan yang lebih kecil. Salah. Adakah kemungkinan untuk kita membuat SULAM melibatkan beberapa fakulti?
Dr. Mukrish.
Ya, saya.
Seorang participant raise hand ni, Dr. Nida. Dr. Nida.
Okey, ya saya. Okey, Dr. Nida, silakan.
Assalamualaikum, Doktor. Saya cuma nak tanya sebab now we have restrictions kan on social distancing and everything. So how do you engage with the community during during this time?
What I can share with you, the one at the report, from KPT, and also from UPM itself. Because I think MCO started on the 18th of March, and that's when the semester already started about 4 weeks. So if at that point the course that you're doing is teaching, does have the element of SULAM, and at that point, I mean, quite a number know that they need to switch it into concept, okay? So they start to engage still back with the community. I mean, I think there were some lagging for a couple of weeks. I think it was experienced by all the universities in Malaysia on a couple of weeks, because people need to start engaging back with the community. How are they, comfortable using online platform? I mean, you have to engage and discuss with the community and again with the student, because sometimes the student, because what I can see is that even from my experience, just teaching normal lectures, they tend to disengage and disconnect, and they sort of disappeared. And that is a bit of a problem, but you really have to get in touch with them, because it is credited. I mean, because SULAM element, it is embedded in the course, and it is under penilaian berterusan. That means they will be graded. They will have to participate. And for the community, I mean, it was a little bit of hard work to quite a number of us. I think many of course coordinator, they said that they cannot perform. I think they changed it into a different method of assessment. But a number of universities, and even in UPM, I'm surprised that we managed to do it. So it's the committee, the KPT will finalize and look at the reports of this current semester, what type of best practice that has been done in different institutions, and we will share with all the universities, and perhaps in the future we can even adapt this e-SULAM. Okay.
Okay, looking forward for sharing session on that.
Will do, inshallah. All right. So,
seorang lagi participant, Dr. Azlina, Dr.
Okay, silakan. Dr. Azrina.
Dr. Azlina, unmute your mic.
Oh, I already asked in the chat punya Zoom just now, ethics.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
But I think one more lah, Dr. Muklis, because ethics I know is the experience by the students, but somehow how about the jawatan kuasa UPM? Because I think we have to deal also. Do we have to deal with them, or we don't have to deal with them? These are some of the issues that comes to my mind, because if we are talking about postgraduate students, we have to deal with them. But if let's say our student, even though they are doing interview, but I think that is also one of the requirement from jawatan kuasa ethics UPM. Itu concern saya di sini.
I agree with you. Untuk saya, sememangnya sekiranya kita memang kita sebagai peneras kursus dan kita nampak bahawa ada penlibatan komuniti yang ada interview, dan kita sudah tahu bahawa kita perlu mendapatkan ethics approval, maka kita perlu sediakan segala maklumat berkenaan application untuk getting ethics approval. So that needs to be done at week 0, not when week 1. So that means when the student comes, that means you start telling them, this is the activity that we're going to do for SULAM, di mana melibatkan interview, perlu berinteraksi sama ada online ataupun face to face. Kita perlukan ethics approval. Maka ini bukan lecturer tersebut yang buat, tetapi membimbing pelajar tersebut untuk sama-sama draft kertas kerja untuk dibawakan kepada ethics. Dan saya rasa benda ni perlu dilihat di peringkat jawatan kuasa SULAM Universiti, macam mana untuk perlu diperhalusi SOP yang perlu dilaksanakan. Mungkin melibatkan how do we engage with community. I mean, that needs to be done. Okay. Alright, so Dr. Vijaya Lachumi, I think you raised your hand, so perhaps you can unmute your mic.
Okey, Doktor.
Yes, saya.
Terima kasih. Doktor, sebagai contohnya pengantar penterjemahan, kita ajar subjek pengantar penterjemahan dan pelajar akan mengetahui jenis-jenis penterjemahan yang ada dalam online dan bagaimana dia mempengaruhi komuniti dan sebagainya lah. Jadi pelajar akan turun padang, akan contohnya e-SULAM ni mereka memilih komuniti di sekolah, contohnya tingkatan 5 mereka akan buat webinar ataupun online Zoom ke Google Meet ke, memberi input kepada generasi yang bakal akan memasuki ke universiti dan pengaruh tentang terjemahan yang ada online tu macam mana mempengaruhi. Diorang akan buat, diorang akan dapat maklumat dan feedback daripada komuniti tersebut. Jadi adakah dia diterima sebagai satu sulam, e-SULAM, betul?
Ia sebenarnya boleh juga, asalkan dalam kursus tersebut sepanjang aktiviti dilaksanakan dengan pelajar-pelajar tahun form 5 tu, dia ada feedback daripada community dan juga pelajar kita, dan perlu ada reflection sebelum melaksanakan program, ketika pelaksanaan program, dan selepas apa yang mereka nampak. Perlu ada reflection. Adakah ada masalah dan mereka perlu utarakan, dan mungkin di situ akan ada feedback daripada pensyarah juga untuk menambah baik tindakan pelajar tersebut. Dan kadang-kadang dan adalah digalakkan di antara mereka sendiri untuk memberi idea untuk memperbaiki aktiviti tersebut contohnya.
Okey, masih Doktor.
Sama. Okey, saya ada satu di sini. Ada kemungkinan kita membuat e-SULAM melibatkan fakulti. Okey, penglibatan beberapa fakulti untuk melaksanakan e-SULAM tu boleh, tetapi adalah usaha course coordinator untuk mengenal pasti dan juga berbincang dengan dekan lah sekiranya untuk bergabung pelajar untuk menyelesaikan masalah komuniti tersebut. Itu boleh dilakukan, sangat fleksibel dan adalah digalakkan kerana ini adalah lebih baik kerana akan ada multidisciplinary approach mana pelajar dapat bekerjasama dan menghayati dan mendalami aplikasi pelbagai bidang untuk menyelesaikan masalah komuniti tersebut. Itu satu cara yang agak bagus dan tetapi kena ada effort sedikitlah daripada course coordinator dan juga pelajar tersebut. Islam belum dapat kebenaran TNC HEPA, dekan dan kawasan komuniti. Sebarang aktiviti like teaching plan, we have to go through the faculty eventually. And then sekiranya melibatkan komuniti tersebut, mungkin ada approval daripada district officer contohnya. Tapi saya rasa itu hanya paperwork or sometimes over the phone. Tak ada masalah yang merumitkan sehingga boleh mengekang perjalanan aktiviti pelajar tersebut. Wajib SULAM dilaksanakan hanya untuk subjek teras ataupun elektif. Itu adalah bergantung sebenarnya apa yang diharapkan oleh pihak kementerian, di mana elemen service learning atau SULAM ada diterapkan sekurang-kurangnya dalam satu kursus dalam setiap program, di mana itu adalah lebih baik kerana kita menyahut ataupun cuba mencapai apa yang telah disediakan di bawah Malaysian Higher Education Blueprint, di mana elemen-elemen shift 1 until 10, how do we want to incorporate HIPS in there, ada melibatkan service learning. So that's where it is important to include them if possible. Okay, so that will have to be at the academic level. The TDA will have to look into it. So e-SULAM embedded dalam kursus sedia ada, apakah peratus komponen e-SULAM? Okay, peratusan dia, I mean, it's like what I said earlier, it's very flexible. It falls under penilaian berterusan. It could be 40%, 60%, depending on how the course coordinator designed the assessment for the course. Okay, and to conduct e-SULAM, I mean, it could be 100% online, 50-50, 60-40, 40-60, 80-20. It really depends on the course coordinator, looking at the scenario. I mean, the MCO, RMCO, they have different SOPs to follow. You have to adapt, all right? So it's not too rigid. So when you want to conduct SULAM, it's very flexible as long as you follow the guidelines that suggest that it needs to have about 15 to 20 hours of engagement with the community. Even the type of activity can be defined by the course coordinator itself, as long as we provide the service to the community. The most essential part is the reflection that needs to take place before, during, and after the completion of the SULAM activity. Okay. Okay.
Doktor, untuk maklumat umum berkenaan SULAM ni,
Ya, saya
rasa boleh refer kepada website CADe lah.
Betul. Sebenarnya saya cadangkan untuk semua lihat dekat website CADe. Sebenarnya lengkap. Ada beberapa information tentang ada slide presentation dan playbook, dan kalau tak silap saya ada rangkuman aktiviti SULAM yang telah dilaksanakan oleh pensyarah-pensyarah UPM pada tahun lepas, dan agak detail dia punya penerangan daripada setiap kursus yang ditunjukkan di bawah CADe. Itu boleh menjadikan rujukan untuk semua pensyarah di UPM. Okay, ada apa-apa lagi? So Puan Yasmin, kita ada berapa lama lagi?
Actually kita dah 21
Habis kan? Okay, alright.
Yeah, so thank you Dr. Mukesh atas perkongsian pada hari ini.
Ya.
So untuk participants yang masih ada persoalan, jika memerlukan penerangan mungkin boleh berhubungi CADe, ataupun kalau nak tanya Dr. Mukesh sendiri boleh email kepada Dr. Mukesh.
Boleh email pada saya.
Ya.
Okay.
So saya ucapkan terima kasih sekali lagi Dr. Mukesh, dan juga kepada semua participants dan di Zoom dan juga di YouTube. So jumpa lagi. Assalamualaikum dan selamat tengah hari.
Okay, terima kasih semua.